What if I told you that one of the greatest football stories of all time almost never happened? That a player once rejected for being too skinny would go on to conquer the Premier League, win the Champions League, and leave an entire nation in awe? It's a tale of struggle, of being overlooked, of proving every single doubter wrong. But more importantly, it's a story that holds a hidden advantage, one that most people completely miss. Today, we're breaking down the secret formula that turned Riyad Mahrez from an unknown street footballer into one of the greatest wingers of his generation. Before we dive in, comment below from which country you are watching this video. Let's see how far this story has traveled. And of course, if you love these kinds of deep football stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some footballers seem to be discovered instantly, while others slip through the cracks for years? It all comes down to three key factors. First, a hidden psychological trigger that transformed Mahrez's entire mindset, something that doubled his retention at every club he played for. Second, a controversial scouting technique that went against everything traditional football experts believed in, yet unearthed one of the greatest underdog stories in football history. And third, a tiny tweak in Mahrez's decision-making that skyrocketed his career, taking him from rejection and failure to becoming one of the most feared wingers in the world. But first, let's rewind to where it all began, where Riyad Mahrez was nothing more than a kid playing pickup games on the streets of Paris, completely unaware that his life was about to change forever. Riyad Mahrez wasn't born into the perfect football environment. He didn't come from a prestigious academy or have elite coaches shaping his career from day one. Instead, he grew up in Sarcelles, a rough suburb of Paris, where football wasn't just a sport, it was survival. Street football was the only training ground he had, and unlike the academy-trained players who mastered tactics and structure, Mahrez learned the game in its rawest form. His dribbling became unpredictable, his movement instinctive, and his creativity limitless. But despite his natural talent, there was one major problem. Mahrez was too skinny. Scouts and coaches took one look at his frame and dismissed him instantly. They believed he lacked the physicality to survive in professional football. It wasn't that he wasn't good enough. It was that nobody was willing to take a risk on a player who didn't fit the traditional mold. And this is where the first psychological trigger comes into play, the mindset shift that changed everything. At 16, Mahrez suffered a devastating loss. His father, the one person who always pushed him to take football seriously, passed away from a heart attack. It was in that moment that everything changed. Mahrez made a decision. He was going to make it, no matter what it took. He wasn't playing for fun anymore. He was playing with purpose. But even with this newfound determination, the odds were stacked against him. 4 years, he remained unnoticed, playing in the lower leagues of French football, rejected time and time again because of his physique. And then, something unexpected happened, a twist that would change his career forever. A football scout didn't discover him. A music agent did. Yes, you heard that right. A music agent, who scouted for players as a side gig, saw something in Mahrez that no one else did. He wrote down just 3 things in his notebook: clever, technical, dead ball specialist, but needs to eat more porridge. And just like that, Mahrez's journey took a bizarre turn. The agent sent him for a trial in Scotland, where Mahrez, despite his talent, was completely out of place. The freezing weather, the rough tackles, the culture shock, it was too much. He even faked an injury just to escape and return to France. It seemed like another setback, but in reality, it was the start of something bigger. Because what happened next changed everything. Back in France, Mahrez was at a crossroads. He had no club, no contract, and no clear future. Months passed with rejection after rejection. He knocked on doors, reached out to clubs, but nobody was willing to take a chance on him. It seemed like the same story repeating: too small, too weak, not suited for professional football. But then, an opportunity came out of nowhere. A small French club, Quimper, newly promoted to the 4th division, was holding open trials. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the big break he had dreamed of. But it was a chance. There was just one problem. The trial was 6 hours away, and the train ticket cost €160. Money his family simply didn't have. But Mahrez wasn't about to let this slip away. He turned to his mother and said, "Don't worry, I'll pay you back. This time, I'm going to make it." When he arrived, the odds were against him once again. More than 20 players were there, many with better resumes, experience, and connections. But when the final decision was made, only one name was written down: Riyad Mahrez. The club's manager saw something special, but there was still one last obstacle. The club president refused to sign him. He looked at Mahrez's thin frame and said, "He's too small. He's not worth €750 a month." Mahrez was crushed. He had come all this way, impressed everyone on the pitch, and yet he was about to be rejected again, not because of his skill, but because of his body. He couldn't hold back his emotions. He broke down in tears right in front of them. The staff felt so bad that they called his mother, hoping for some kind of reassurance. And her response: "Please, do whatever you can for him." That moment changed everything. The manager went back into the boardroom, looked at the president, and said, "If this kid doesn't become the next Zidane, it'll be on you." And with that, Mahrez was finally given a chance. But his struggles weren't over yet. At Quimper, he lived like a college student, sharing a tiny apartment with Matthias Pogba, Paul Pogba's brother, eating nothing but takeout, and still failing to gain a single kilo. His teammates laughed at him, nicknaming him the Chicken because of his skinny legs. But on the ball, he was magic. Even though Quimper ended up relegated, Mahrez had made enough noise to attract bigger scouts. But still, he was stuck in the lower leagues. It seemed like the dream was just out of reach. And then, another unexpected twist. A scout from Le Havre, a club known for developing stars like Paul Pogba and Dimitri Payet, saw Mahrez play. They invited him to join their B team, a step closer to professional football. It wasn't the top flight. It wasn't instant success. But it was the opportunity that would finally put Mahrez on the path to greatness. At Le Havre, Mahrez thought he had finally made it, but reality hit him hard. Despite his talent, he was still just another player in the system. He started in the B team, where his raw, street-style football clashed with the club's structured approach. At first, he struggled. He wasn't strong enough. His tactical awareness was poor. And in his very first chance with the senior squad, the coach subbed him on, only to sub him off just 40 minutes later. It was humiliating. Mahrez was crushed. He spent 6 months replaying that moment in his head, doubting if he'd ever break through. But this is where Mahrez did something different, something that separates stars from those who give up. Instead of accepting his role as a backup, he made a decision. He started telling his teammates, "You'll see where I am in 2 years." He said it so much that they had to pull him aside and tell him to stop talking about it. But Mahrez didn't stop. He trained harder. He watched games differently. He studied defenders, learned when to cut inside, when to take risks. And when he got his next chance, he never let go. By the time Steve Walsh, Leicester City's legendary scout, saw him play, Mahrez wasn't just another player anymore. He was electric. Walsh had come to watch a different player, but by the end of the match, he couldn't take his eyes off Mahrez. His dribbling, his touch, his ability to create something out of nothing, it was all there. Leicester offered Mahrez a contract, but at first, he hesitated. He had never heard of Leicester City. "Aren't they a rugby team?" he asked. His friends and family told him, "England isn't for you. It's too physical." But something inside him said otherwise. This was his chance. He took the risk. The rest is history. Within a year, Mahrez was in the Premier League. Within 2 years, he was winning the title with Leicester at 5,000 to 1 odds, the greatest underdog story in football. He became PFA Player of the Year, African Player of the Year, and one of the most sought-after wingers in the world. From a kid playing pickup football in Paris to a Champions League winner, Mahrez's story isn't just about football. It's about resilience, belief, and taking your chance when nobody else believes in you. So now, let me ask you, what's stopping you from chasing your dreams?